You are at Steve Morse Engines. This is Alan Whitaker. This is Alan's SMX. We're doing a special deal where we have already done all the clearancing, bearing checks, clearances, ring gaps, everything. But I wanted to have Alan here so he could see how it all goes together. Alan's an involved guy, likes to work on stuff. So I said, might as well have him know exactly how everything is, how it fits, how it feels, what it is. So we have the block all prepped here, everything's all laid out there for the rest of the bottom end, and we're going to be showing you everything in this build. So I got Alan. First thing we're going to do is, since we've already cleaned all this, but I want Alan to look at it. If you can look inside an oil passage, you'll be amazed what you can see. And I usually would say if it doesn't feel dirty, it's not, and if it doesn't look dirty, it's not, because you can see and feel microns. I mean, so we just visually look at it. We've already cleaned it, brushed it, but you always go through it and just do a little verification. Everything looked good.
Uptight and jelly right.
Yep. And we got the uptight and jelly right. Mm-hmm. Oh, all right. The rear plug is in there. Now these crankshafts are actually gun drilled. Gun drilled means that all the way through the center main is a hole that goes all the way out the back of the crankshaft. If you don't have this soft plug in the back of the crankshaft, it is a 1-inch oil leak. which is a pretty big problem. So that soft plug has to be back in there, and then they also gun drill all the way through the rod journal. Immediate question people ask is, well, how do they run the oil holes through there? Some kind of voodoo, black magic arts, I don't know. It's amazing how they drill holes, because this hole here is on such an angle. I'm not even sure how that even gets started. So I think they must start the holes at a way early in the process and drill holes and then grind to it with a hole already there, is what I figure. But anyways, so it's all clean. Gonna set this thing in. Not gonna bore you to death with just torquing it, but we're actually going to be torquing it. These main studs torque to 150, usually 145 to 150 on this stud, and the outside studs go to 95. Okay. All right. Alright, so Alan has just put a crankshaft in. We have torqued to 145 and 95 here. And we'll actually stamp that into the pan rail, so if he ever has to look at it again, he'll remember without having to look it up or have to call me. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you thrust, because this is one of the things I wanted to show that is different about this engine. Right here you can see crankshaft is all the way back. That is 0. We push the crankshaft forward. This has 9.5 ten-thousandths of thrust. Now that's the stock bearing. What the deal is, if you look up in the front of the engine, this is our rollerized thrust bearing that goes into the front of the crankshaft. So this whole assembly, and we've already done all this, pre-done this and set the clearances on it. This little inner bearing race, I guess you can call it, will go on there. I have a couple set screws that will tighten up there. Your Torrington bearing, and then your drive plate, and then this all bolts together. Now obviously when this all bolts together, you can't ever get the cap off unless you take the front off, which means you can't take bearing off unless you take the whole front drive off and all that other stuff. So the front bearing cap really never comes off. It's a mother trucker. And we have to machine, or what we do is I machine this. It goes back against the crankshaft, and what we do is we machine the back, and we just keep on setting our thrust, so it's going to have less thrust now because it's actually going to be pushing it back about 5 thousandths because it's always hitting this, not the stock bearing. So it always hits the rollarized thrust bearing. So I just wanted to show you that, and that's how this whole rollarized thrust bearing works. You do this because turbo cars sit on the trans brake for so long, and the converter's just sitting there going, just pushing its little brains out, and it will destroy thrust bearings. This is the ultimate best way of doing it. So we'll put this all on, and then we're going to go ahead and move over to, we've already gapped the rings. Rings are gapped at 32, 32. If you want to see more about pistons and rings, you can go to our Steve Tech video. But this is our MGP rods in this, our diamond piston ring package, AP steel top, Napier second, 3/16 bottom ring. So we're just going to go ahead and put these in. Then we'll go over to camshaft and then do all that stuff, which is loads of fun.
Yeah, party.
So, funnily enough, I told Alan, and see, he's good natured about this stuff, so he understands. And it's not a big deal, but you have to catch it. I said, hey, make sure you don't hit these serrations on the crankshaft and peen it over, because if you do and you don't catch it, you don't fix it, you bolt the cap on, cap doesn't go down properly, and it ends up exiting all the exiting that rod out of the block. And so you got the first one in there, right? And then, but he caught it. He did hit the crankshaft on the second one, and so it just hit the corner of it right here, not very bad. So I just kind of get in there and just give it a little bit of clearance, and it'll be fine. But you have to catch that kind of stuff, and it's good. You catch it, it's no big deal. You don't catch it, it's a big deal.
I'm spending a lot of money for your education.
Alright, Alan's got all the pistons and rods in. We just verified that everything's free, clear. Like I said, we've already done this, rod clearance on this. Already checked all the clearances. And now we'll just do, I like to just do a turning torque, because I know what these things take. So all we do is on constant pressure. Yeah, that's about right, 30, 35 to 40. So it usually takes, with just the rotating assembly, so the only thing you're really measuring is grease on the bearings and piston ring drag. So since you cannot get away with light tension rings like in an NA deal, in a big blower deal, because it will kill the ring before you get out of the burnout box. It'll be dead. So they have a lot of ring tension on them because we're more interested in ring control than we are 10 horsepower. Could give a crap less about 10 horsepower. We just want it to live. So that looks real, excuse me, looks real good. About 35 to 40 pounds of turning torque, which is mainly piston ring drag, and then just the residual of everything else. Everything's all torqued up. The rods is torqued at 105. So you went through that. You double check everything. So we're all good there. Did our thrust. Now we're going to put the camshaft in and start working on doing our camshaft stuff. And I'll show you how to go about doing that. So probably you're asking, what are these hoses for? These hoses are basically a balance tube to make sure we have equal oil on both lifter valleys, because it oils from the primary oil galley to one oil galley, or to, I'm sorry, one oil passage from the main to the next lifter passage, and we need to cross it over to get oil over the side. And then put this one over as a balance tube so it does a nice job. Otherwise it tends to pick on back lifters. So that's why there's two balance tubes here to make sure that lifters get oiled, which means that our rocker arms and valve train gets oiled. Because this is a drag and drive deal, it is not tolerant to 5 seconds of oil. Obviously, it needs 8 hours worth of 200 degree or 220 degree oil, 250 degree oil. Now this camshaft that Alan's holding, this is 65 millimeter core. It is a big bad boy dude. Now what this is, the rear cam bearing in the block is actually a roller bearing, and the other bearings are Babbitt. We'll go ahead and put this in, and then I'll show you how we do a rough set on where the distributor lines up, because brand new, there is no dots, there's no things like that. We just have to figure it out. So go ahead and put that in. Okay, so what's going on here is, you saw on the back of that cam journal, on the very back one, has a step. Well, the step goes in and hits the rear cam bearing, rear roller bearing, and that's why that rear roller bearing is snap ringed in. That sets thrust going backwards. We set thrust coming forward with the front cover. So when we put the front cover on, I'll show you that. Now, the intake valve is basically open about 100 thousandths at top dead center. That is not an actual live number. That is just basically around there. Good enough, close enough for us to then check. So then we're not hunting around for it. So what I do is I spin this over until we're at about 100 thousandths right there. Now we'll put on the gear set stuff here. So camshaft is rough set. We need to put in our idler. We'll also put in our keyways and put our bottom gear on. So bottom gear on, idler pulley, pinion, idler pulley, and then top gear right here. Then we'll set everything up to degree the camshaft and see where it's actually at. Okay, now you've seen us put everything together. We don't have all the bolts in the top gear because I need to change the top gear. We set up the camshaft roughly where it's at, which is pretty close. We then set the degree wheel so it's actually at 0. Have our indicator in on the lifter. Had it set up there. It was 123. 123 is not right. This thing needs to be we'll probably put it in between 114, 115 is where we're going to put it in. So what we have to do is the camshaft needs to be advanced then. 123 is retarded. It needs to go advanced. So we will move this top gear to a spot where it is going to force the camshaft forward just slightly. Probably can't see this. In fact, I know you can't see this. But I'm sitting here just figuring out what tooth looks best that's going to move the camshaft the direction I want it to move. Hi.
Dewey's got it figured out. You have a good video on one of your Steve texts.
There you go. Yeah, I have a whole video on how to degree a camshaft, which is the basics of it, but it's a normal deal like a Jessel belt drive or something like that, and then But this whole little offset gear stuff is some kind of geometry, physics, something or another. I just haven't exactly figured out. A 78, yeah, now we're there. 78, 152.
That's 230.
There you go, 115.
115 on the nose.
Okay, so the camshaft is now degreed. We'll put in all these bolts here, these torque to 24, put some red Loctite on them, and with the fuel pump drive plate. So this little plate right here has this big hex spud, and that's what is going to drive the fuel pump through the front cover. And this is the drive spud we take out for the street drive, put in for race drive. Okay, what you just saw there was we clearanced for stroke, because this engine is a 572. Same as what the engine was out of the wagon, the same that I sold to, the engine out of the wagon sold to Cletus McFarland, 572. So this is a 572 also. Now we do these in 525, 540, and 572s. This one is 572. And so that extra stroke hits the oil pan scraper. So we modified the scraper, obviously, so it would clear the stroke. So that's what you just saw there. You saw Alan put the front cover on. Now I need to set my camshaft thrust right here. And the way we do that, remember I showed you that the rear bearing is a roller bearing, and that sets the rear thrust. So the camshaft comes all the way backwards, hits that rear bearing, can't go any farther. Now, there's nothing that pushes a camshaft forward or backwards in an engine other than just, in a roller, other than just floating. So there's no load, there's no nothing on there. So the front of we have the roller bearing in the back, and then just like that rollerized thrust bearing, right there we have another Torrington bearing that we shim up and set our camshaft end play right here on our upper gear cover and fuel pump extension. So it rides on that bearing right there, just like so. So here, all we're going to do is I'm going to shim this up till it gets the proper thrust clearance back and forth. Then this will be bolted on permanent, and that'll be ready to roll. We'll put the oil pan on. We'll have the front cover on. We'll put balancer on, set top dead center. Do all of that, and then we're going to start working on putting the cylinder heads together. So now, this is a complete short block. I also set up the mandrel and just made sure everything fit. Everything is good here. We'll finish up the oil pump and miscellaneous stuff later. But all that stuff is all there. Now we're going to go over and put the cylinder heads together and get that all done. Come over, put that all done, and then do the valve train, which is all proprietary too, to the SMX. So let's go over there and do the cylinder heads, or actually go over there and have Alan do the cylinder heads. What you saw there was Alan putting the last couple of valves in this. Now we've already run all the springs across the spring dyno. So we already have a sheet on that. We already know where everything's at. And we've already done all the installed height. So the installed height is done with the height checker, and so we shim up what you need to shim up. I already have these machined up, so we don't have to put any shims on it. It just goes on with the locator, and that's it. And then was showing Alan in particular how these keepers, the keeper and trash can lid, actually go together, because this, if you notice, this lash cap right there is turning because it's actually located and held into position by the keepers, and then it gives us a much broader area for the roller tip to ride on. Keeps the valve tip okay, because you either have to have a hardened tip or a lash cap on titanium, otherwise it gets destroyed. But this I think is the best way of doing it. I've had the best performance doing it that way, and then we'll verify that everything is correct by giving a little tap there, and you'll be able to turn the lash cap, and you'll know that it's correct in there, it's seated right, the keepers are in there right, everything's nice. Sometimes the lash cap turns just a little bit harder, but you can feel it, it's okay. So everything's good there. And we also have the hoops in. So these one-piece stainless steel fire rings, these fire rings are machined into the cylinder head and then pressed through the copper gasket and go into the receiver groove into the block. Same thing they do with nitromethane cars. I figured that's the best way of doing it. So these heads are ready to go. All the water plates are on it. Everything's in. Valves are in. Valve train is on. These are the actual installed height numbers. 2100. Well, 2108, 107, 107. They don't make a 7000 shim, so we don't bother jerking around with that. Oh, and then these plugs, the top of the port here. So you can see, if you look in there, you can see the plug right there in the top of the port. So this plug is machined in and comes out through the top, because this is our head stud that makes this head not fit on anything else. That head bolt right there goes through the center of the intake port all the way down through the block right here. And that's what gives us really good clamping force compared to a regular 481X. Actually, we have that 1/2 inch head stud instead of a 3/8 stud that's over to the side. Put it right through the port, right there. Machine that plug there. It does have the stud. It does not stick up into the port. It's all flush there, but it has a cavity there. And what always happens is, if you have a hole right there, believe it or not, air fills the hole, it creates a boundary layer, and air goes right over the top of air. So it doesn't like go in the hole and then come out, it just fills up and goes right over. Similar to a dimple on a golf ball. Mm-hmm. Provides a boundary layer of air, and it actually just fills up with air and then keeps things moving smoothly. That's probably the wrong analogy. Somebody's going to call me out on that, but that's the way I think about it.
Pickup truck bed.
Pickup truck bed, that's right. That's right, air just shoots right over the top of it. Doesn't go down in and suck everything out. It does when you open up the gate.
You open up the tailgate, it gets
then it sucks everything out of it.
Yeah, when it comes live.
Yep. All right, so let's go put these things on. Okay, I thought I would show you this, give you a more in-depth description of this inside head stud. So I'll have Tim look at it right up here from the top. If you want to look down there, you can see right down through there. That is our 1/2-inch head stud. Now, if the intake manifold's on it, it's really not a big deal. You just put a little grease on the nut or whatever. But since you have to have the rocker arm stand off in order to even access this hole, the valve is always closed. So even if you drop the nut, you just fish it out with a magnet. It's really no big deal. But you would just pack it full of grease, zip it on there. But that's how you see that thing right there. And then it has, oh, let's see, that would be 8. Then we have those machine plugs, which go right over the top. Just like so. And they run all the way down. And then line up real nice with the roof of the port. And then those sit underneath the rocker arm stand and can't come out, can't get in the way. And so they're totally free and clear of everything right there. Works out real nice right there. So thought I'd show you that. So we're gonna have Alan final torque everything here, and then we're gonna put the rocker arm stands on, get rockers on this thing. Now what you can see here is we have just put the rocker arm stands on. So this is a really super nice one-piece rocker arm stand. And these are all 7/16 bolts attaching it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 7/16 bolts just holding the rocker arm stand down. So we'll get this all torqued up and then start showing you installing the rocker arms. We'll put push rods in. Push rods are all right here. And these are a 1/2-inch to 7/16 taper. We can fit a slightly larger push rod in there, but I haven't found it to be too much beneficial, if any beneficial, and in this length. If they were longer, I definitely would want to, but they're actually a fairly short push rod, comparatively speaking. Really good Manton pieces and Manton rockers. Here's the rocker system. Now this is all proprietary to us. We have these are for SMXs, and you want them, got to get them through us. But they only fit the SMXs anyways. All right, so we're gonna start torquing up all the rocker arm stands right there. See, we have a little bit of extra clearance right through here, and then I'll show you some stuff when we actually put the rocker arm on, what it's doing. All right, lifters are in, rocker arm stands are on, torqued. Alan's now putting in push rods. We've already done any extra push rod clearancing because they just tend to hit right up there close to that bolt. So these are, again, these are all the water jacketing plates because water all goes in through there. Man size intake ports. For a real man. Look at it.
You know it.
Yeah, flex.
That's my flex.
That is flexing.
That's my flex
That's
right
his flexing.
here.
All right. You can put the push rods on this side?
It only needs half of them.
You only need half. Now we'll put the mandrel stuff on and all the little miscellaneous stuff on here in a little bit. But we'll put the rocker arms on. See here.
Pretty as a picture.
Worked at having a fairly straight as possible push rod. Now we'll grab these rocker arms and I'll show you what's going on with this rocker. So, with our rocker arms, what we do is we oil through the push rod. So oil comes through the push rod, pressurizes a channel that is behind this rocker arm right here, behind the adjuster, around the adjuster, and then that pressurizes the shaft. So what happens here is the shaft is pressurized through there, through the body, and these shims, if we don't have any shims here and the rocker arm goes clunk, 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 along with it not being good, and it would, you know, be flopping around, it also bleeds off all the oil pressure right there. So the shims, we get that tight, and the tighter we can make that and keep that nice in there, the more oil pressure it holds in the rocker arm pedestal right there. Then it also shoots oil out after it goes through the fulcrum right here. It actually shoots out onto the tip through the backside. So it kind of gets oil from everywhere right there. But all oil has to come through the lifter passages, up through the lifter, through the push rod, and that oils the whole top half of the engine. So let's start putting some rocker arms on and rock and roll. Another thing you can see here is O-rings. So we don't use any intake gaskets, it's just machined to fit properly. And so O-rings are O-ringed around the port, and then these little O-rings here are actually just to hold oil from leaking out in between the flanges, the flange of the intake manifold and the flange of the cylinder head. So very nice little O-rings right there. Alright, now rockers are all on, all lashed up, put the covers on. I wanted to show you the turning torque real quick because I showed you turning torque with just the rotating assembly was what, 30 pounds?
Yes.
35 pounds?
35 to start and 30.
Alright. So we'll do this. Disregard the breakaway torque, so that doesn't mean anything. It's going to be hard to see here. But that is 120, right around there. So 115, 120. Oh, you can't see that because that's breakaway torque. It shows the peak torque.
Whatever.
So while it is rolling over, it's about 120, which is pretty good. Usually they're about 130 is what they normally are. And that's all because of cam bearing that's in there. So now Alan, this is Alan's intake manifold right here. And we're not going to put it on permanently because he's going to take it back home and he's going to have to take it right back off. So there's no sense putting this on permanent. But this, we got to shine this up a little bit because they fabbed it up. This
Is my SMX.
is your SMX. Is Alan's SMX. Tell it you love it.
I do love it.
Give it a hug. There you go. Oh, you kissed it and everything.
It's going in greeny. We'll be drag and drive this year.
All right. Drag and drive.
Small tires on notice.
Small tires on
That's
notice.
right. 315s were coming to play.
That's right. All right. I'm Steve Morris.
I'm
This is Alan Whitaker. Oh, you're going to say it yourself. Do it.
I'm Alan Whitaker. This is Steve Morris.
Have a great day.
Thanks.